This is the home price index that I created back to 1890. It's only the S&P Case-Shiller index back to 1987. Before that, I spliced together other series. The red line is real inflation-corrected price for a standard home in the United States. And again, the remarkable thing is this boom that we've seen since 1997 and this tremendous correction. So this is the national index. This is for the country as a whole. This is not just one city. And you could say it's international too, but I'm not showing that on this chart. So we've had a tremendous boom and bust in the housing market. It's not explained by the other fundamentals shown on this chart: population, interest rates, or building costs. And it's unprecedented. The only, well, actually, you could say there's this precedent here, right after World War II. That boom has a name. Does anyone know what it's called? The baby boom, yeah. The soldiers came home, they had babies, and they started bidding up home prices because they wanted that two-bedroom home. Would you believe it? Two-bedroom home. When you have a baby, you want a separate bedroom, right? And they weren't available because of the wartime shortages. This is, again, just to show you how booms have appeared in the past. This is the, it's called Japanese urban land prices back to 1970. Japan had this tremendous boom in the late 1980s when it was so confident, the same time as the stock market boom. In fact, you know, the Japanese were rightfully confident because we were losing our confidence here in the United States, all over the world. There was this idea that the Japanese automakers were soon to drive American automakers into bankruptcy. Like they had already driven out all of our camera makers and our stereophonic sound makers. They were all being replaced by Japanese. So somehow we were all spooked by their success, but it was exaggerated. And the Japanese believed it while it was lasting. And I wanted to talk about individual cities. This is now this is the S&P Case-Shiller home price indices. And it's not completely up to date. This ends in August. But what I wanted to show is that it's many different cities are involved in this boom and bust. It's a national phenomenon. In fact, that's what really changed. There were isolated city real estate booms going back, like for the Miami or the Florida land boom of the 1920s, which preceded the Great Depression. But they're never as national as the current boom. They're also by different price tier. This is for New York. We call it commuter index. It's the whole New York area where you might commute into the city. It went through a recent boom in the 1990s. I'm sorry, in the early 2000s. But the boom was strongest in the low-priced homes, and the decline was strongest in low-priced homes. But it really invaded all price tiers. This is the same thing for Miami. I mentioned there was a huge boom in Miami in the 1920s. Well, our data don't go that far back. Miami completely settled down, and there was like nothing was happening in any of the three tiers through the 1980s and 1990s. But then all of a sudden, in the early 2000s, there was this huge boom and then sudden collapse. Now, it's partly due to the subprime lending revolution. And I think that's why the low-tier homes went up the most, as you can see, and came down the most. But I think that I wouldn't blame it on the subprime revolution, because the subprime revolution only primarily affects low-priced homes, and you see the high-priced homes in the same boom. Moreover, I think the subprime revolution is in some sense a consequence of the housing bubble. Like people got so excited about housing, the lenders believed it too and thought that they were doing these low-income borrowers a great favor by getting them into a mortgage, because they all believed that home prices were going to just go up and up. I know they believe this because Carl Case and I have been doing questionnaire surveys of home buyers, and they've had really extravagant expectations. The mean expectation for Los Angeles in the peak of the market was 23% a year for the next 10 years. That's what people told us, although it was the median was only something like 12%, because about a third of the people are just wacko about this, and they think it's going to be 50% a year. You know, it just can't be right. if home prices went up just 10% a year, do you know what compound interest does? This boom was driven not by a sense that we're in a temporary boom that you want to get out of. It was driven by a sense of a new reality that home prices will just always go up at 10% a year. Well, what if New York City had gone up 10% a year every year since 1776, all right? New York was here, it was a city. Do you know what prices would be? You know, the power of compound interest would mean they would be just astronomical. It ain't so. They don't do that. People got this crazy idea. And so this is Las Vegas. That's my favorite one of all. Isn't that amazing? Las Vegas, which is the gambling center of the country, they weren't gamblers. They weren't paying any. They were going to the casinos, and they weren't even thinking about their real estate until all of a sudden, wham! In the late what was that, 2003 or so, and then they've come all the way back down since. So that, you know, in a lot of these cities, we're back already. The home price bubble is over, but the concern now is whether they'll overshoot and decline to below where they were before. This is just to show international. The U.S. seemed to lead the world on home price busts, but London is not far behind, and prices there are now falling. If you look at their some of their forecast markets, they're predicting major declines there. So this is the cover of our book. And George had the idea of getting Ed Koren, the cartoonist who often does New Yorker covers, because he does figures that look like animals. And so our theory is that animal spirits is what substantially drives economies. And this is totally contrary to contemporary macro theory.